Welcome to Name Takes, a podcast about the cultures of naming, from the names of streets to buildings to people and beyond. What are the stories behind certain names? And what causes do specific names promote? Where can the roots of one name or other be found? Could these be invented? In Name Takes, we include artists' voices and cases from the art field. Because in art, meaning-making is central. And most of all, because art helps us formulate better questions about the present.
On this episode of Name Takes, I interview the artist Cihad Caner. I met him a rainy morning at Okapi Studios in Rotterdam. My name is Sofía Hernández Chong Cuy. I speak to Cihad about a project he developed around a Dutch pastry, which name was being questioned and which name eventually changed. In our conversation, we also touch upon other work that he made that taps on difficult histories.
My name is Cihad Caner. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey, but I live in Rotterdam almost for 10 years. I did my master's in Rotterdam at the Kunstinstituut. So since then, I'm having my artistic practice here in the Netherlands. If I talk about my work, I make mostly videos, installations, and sometimes photography. And my works are always related to the representation of other, migration, authority, and image production. So in each work, I tend to create a fictional character. So then they talk and think about the subject that I'm dealing with in that specific project. I think in general this is what I do. But I'm also really interested in history and how history and past can tell us what's happening in our time. So I tend to do cross-references from past to our time to present or future.
Great. I was at your studio in the Rijksacademie in Amsterdam not too long ago, and you were developing a project related to Rotterdam South and key demonstrations that took place historically, not so long ago, I would say, but that you related to the present.
Yeah, actually, it's been almost a year that we met actually in my studio at the Rijksacademie, and since then, the work developed quite much. So the studio presentation you saw last June, it was the first outcome of the project, which was a film. So it speaks about the riots happened in Afrikaanderwijk in 1972 against the guest workers, or in Dutch, gastarbeiders. But I realized that this is completely forgotten in the history of the city, in the history of the country. No one remembers this at all. So I was more interested in why this event is forgotten. So then I started to look for some people who remembers this. So in the end, I could find around 5. And when I started to listen their testimonies, it was also quite different from each other. And I realized that it's not about the truth anymore in this project. It's about memory. So it's not something concrete. It's quite fluid. It changes from one person to another.
And what is the name of the video?
The name of the video is it has a very long title. Uh-huh. So it is called Remembering the Riots in Afrikaanderwijk in 1972. Guest, host, or ghostie. The second part of the title is very important because this tension between the guests, hosts, so because these guest workers invited as a guest, so they were expecting some hospitality, but then they were shown a lot of hostility in this case. So for me, etymology is also very important. So in each project, I check etymological origins of the words I'm dealing with. So it was an interesting encounter when I realized that guest and host comes from the same linguistic root, which is ghosty. So that's why I also included this in the title of the project, because the titles are quite important for me. So I try to give some kind of clue for my audience without seeing the work, so they can also understand what's going on, or as some kind of like first course.
Now, you said earlier that you always create a character, or you tend to create a character in your work that is able to speak to issues around representation, but you've also spoken about truth-telling or collective memory in a different way. And I wanted to come back to the original motivation of having you invited you to Name Takes, which is to speak about the project that you did around Moorkop. And maybe I'm mispronouncing it. So if you could perhaps tell me, how is it pronounced? Moorkop.
Yeah, Moorkop, but then I also tend not to use this. Like, that's why I think like having part of the discussions around the name change from Wittedewit to Kunstinstituut Melly. Like now, like actually I call it like formally known as Moorkop.
Formerly known as Moorkop. Very
or
good.
Just to give the context, because like for me it's a better phrase for this project at the moment. Mm-hmm. But yeah, actually it's a pastry. I think like your pronunciation is also correct. Like it's called Moorkop.
And it's a pastry that, just so that we can get a sense of the smell and the taste, maybe the texture, it's a pastry that's quite popular in the Netherlands, meaning you could find it in everything from a supermarket as a ready-made pastry that's packaged, or also in bakeries in town.
Yes,
right?
It's a chocolate glazed pastry, so it's also filled with pastry cream, and there's also whipped cream on the top. So when you really like look at this pastry before you eat, you get the resemblance of a sort of a head that has a turban on its head, actually. So that's why it's also called like Moorkop. So actually, when we also look at etymology of this name, like moor or moor means like person who comes from northern part of Africa, and kop means head. It is like the literal translation of this name. So it has, as I said, like it has the resemblance of a person who has a turban on his head and who has a colored skin. So, and it's just like when I heard or when I understood the meaning of this pastry in 2017, back then I could slowly start to understand the Dutch language, because it was shocking for me. I was like, how come this is possible that, no one like talks about it? Because I was already aware of the discussions around another pastry in the Netherlands.
But first, just to get a sense.
Yeah.
So you learned about this pastry, the Moorkop, about a decade ago when you just had arrived.
Yeah, I heard about it because I was in an artistic circle that we talk about like stuff, what's happening around us. And so I was already aware of the discussion around another pastry called Zoon now, or Kus. So there was a name change or name discussion around this particular pastry. But
what was that pastry?
It's also a chocolate pastry, and it also had like some kind of problematic name or racial slur for particular communities in the Netherlands or neighbor countries in the Netherlands, because this pastry, formerly known as Moorkop, also exists in Belgium, the western part of Germany, and Switzerland.
so formerly known as Moorkop, this is how you call it. Has the name of this pastry actually changed, or that would be the suggestion?
Actually, I started to make the project in 2019. So it's an animation film with a Rotterdam-based actor, Mahfoud Mukaddam. While I was editing the video, actually, I saw on the TV that a Dutch baker in a village called Monster, near Den Haag, actually, suggested a name change, saying that this name of the pastry doesn't fit to our time, so I would like to rename this pastry. So I was just like watching what's going on. So and his store got vandalized after this proposal, actually.
He had a bakery himself.
Yeah. And he went on like some TV shows, but then I also talked to him and I said like, would you like to collaborate in this project? And he said like, I would like to slay lo-fi for a while. And after this proposal, actually, Heima followed him. And
so Heima, the mega store.
Yeah. They said that, this name, yes, it doesn't fit to our time. We will think about a new name. So there were some names going around like a chocolate ball or like monster ball or like or monster cop. So, but then like, it was also quite absurd, actually. They were just talking about the name or new name, like what should we like give as a name. So then the names were circulating around. Sort of there was a response from I don't know exactly which part of the government, but like the gastronomy agency of the government was saying that you cannot call this a chocolate ball because it needs to contain at least, I'm just speculating, like 50% chocolate. Otherwise, it's just it's not a true name. So then it was quite absurd. So they weren't talking about what it brings as a name or what it takes. So they were like literally just, okay, let's rename it.
Technically speaking. Yeah. So my question is to you then, how did you notice or discuss amongst your peers? You said that you are always in conversation with a group of friends, of peers, of other artists and thinkers. How did you discuss that the renaming of this pastry, when it went to media, focused more on a marketing or technical discussion instead of the more philosophical, historically specific conversation where the debate emerged?
Yeah. I mean, like my discussions were like, okay, like, are you going to propose a new name or like? But for me, it wasn't about like renaming the pastry. For me, it was about the discussions that this project can open around this topic, or like the why like this sort of like innocent pastry has like this problematic name. Why like it's always given to this type of like, because racism like is not always like on your face, but it also finds itself in very like hidden or part of your daily life. You don't realize that it has like this problematic name. And therefore, like, making a collaborative work was quite important for me. That's why working closely with Mahfoud was a quite eye-opener, because for me, because like Moor also, of course, related to Morocco, or the Moors in Spain and Portugal back then. So it was important to work closely with Mahfoud, who is a Dutch-Moroccan actor. For example, like it plays like Shakespeare's Othello.
So in your video, he takes on the role of Othello.
Yes. And because like Othello is also a Moorish character, which I didn't know before. Because like before each play, Shakespeare like writes like what kind of character they are in each play. So then like it says a Moorish character. So then I thought, okay, why don't this pastry plays Othello? But as I said, like the pastry is just a head, But then I made a costume for the pastry, animation costume, of course. So then it's like in the form of a ghost. It's just like floating around, and this costume is attached to the head.
What is the relationship between the ghost of this pastry that's animated with the actor?
The actor actually I use motion capture technology. So motion capture means that I use a special camera to capture all the movements of the actor. So then they just become one, because animated character actually is like a puppet.
What are some of the key lines that the pastry or Othello then delivers, whether they're understood in the Old Dutch or in the subtitles?
I can start with the title of the project. It's called Wie kan zijn noodlot dwingen, which means who can control their fate. So obviously this pastry couldn't control his fate, so then it ended up in such a position. And one of the lines that the pastry recites actually asking or saying, I'm just trying to remember, it is saying the glorious days and the days of the empires are done, so it's time for me. And but in the play actually it says Othello's days are starting, but then in the film I use sometimes Othello or sometimes me, that it also blends into the character.
And of course, what we're looking at is not a person, but the animation of the pastry.
Yeah. And in the animation, it sort of plays the same chapter in different emotional stage. Actually, the one it's sort of repeating the same text for 3 times, but then sometimes it's very emotional, sometimes it's very angry, and sometimes it's just very normal.
So what was the fate of the formerly known Moorkop?
Yeah.
What is the name that was provided, whether in the animation or in the pastry shop, whether at Hemma or around the corner from The Hague in Monstertown?
I think the baker who initiated the name change, I don't know what kind of name he gave in the end, because there were some discussions, but for Hema it's called chocoladebol now, so they have more chocolate to call it chocolate ball. But for example, for a long time I was seeing this pastry in Jumbo and Albertine, but then they removed it completely.
So in the supermarkets, Jumbo and Albert Heijn, they removed it as a product, meaning it's a pastry that's no longer sold at all. But Hema continues carrying it. Tell me, you talked about Monster earlier, but you talked about Monster as it pertained the town of the baker, who, or the name of the town of the baker, who proposed a renaming of Moorkop to Chocolate Boy and such. Do you find that there is a relationship between monsters, borders, or perhaps even what is impossible to surpass, or perhaps to mention, to name?
Yeah, I mean, monster, I think I'm haunted by monsters. It's it's always coming to me, even when I realized that this baker is from a village called Monster. I was okay, maybe this is too much. But because I made a project about monsters, and it started with the word monster actually. In European languages, actually, monster, the word itself, The etymological origin stems from Latin, from monstrare, which means indicate, expose, and monere, report danger. So monster actually doesn't mean something supernatural. So it means that you indicate someone or something as a danger. So that's why monster actually defines the border, who is with us, like, or who is with them.
A limit.
Limit, yeah. And so in that monster project, like, it also started with a question: how does the image of other has been represented as a monster? So I'm talking about the political other, of course. So they are using these monster bodies to talk about their experiences. So there are real people behind these monsters. So they are saying, like, they are talking about their experiences. And for me, it was a very starting point of this type of approach, like to use CGI and motion capture and to work issues related to some socio-political issues, but then using this humoristic approach, because in a way, like, it can build up a relationship with your audience.
Yeah, and I think that if I remember also well, I mean, the animation of the chocolate ball, it is like a very funny little ghost, right?
Yeah.
Now, what is the relationship then that you draw between monster and ghost? Because the puppet, or the chocolate ball in this case, also, as you said, looks like and is presented like a little ghost. So is there at all a relationship between monsters and ghosts in your own research about the other or the representation of others?
Yeah, as I said, like before, I'm really interested in the past. So that's why I really like this quote from William Faulkner: "The past is never past." So it is like dealing with the past and working with these animated characters helps me a lot. So then I invite them to sort of tell about what's happening and what's going on in the present time. So monsters and ghosts, they are just siblings in this case, because they are the protagonists of the genre of horror, which is always like, it's all about the creatures, beings who are not from our normal world or our normal time.
The strangers.
The strangers, yeah.
Yeah. And so now there is a moment in which you mentioned that one of the outcomes of your ongoing research around renaming is going to be to do city tours. Is there also another film or animation or installation in development as well?
Yeah, now I'm trying to finalize this project, and the last outcome will be a publication, actually, that I'm working with school children in the neighborhood, that we are trying to create an alternative archive of the riots. It's a very abstract archive, actually, compared to how it was depicted, a very documentary approach. And the next project that I would like to actually have, it's going to be a historical movie about an Ottoman Sultan who ended up in Europe in the 1400s, who met Columbus, who met with Pope, stayed in Vatican. But he also had a parrot during his lifetime. So I would like to create a video and parrot as the main character of this film.
So is this character of the Ottoman Sultan, is it a fictional character, or this is like a historic figure that you've been reading about?
Yeah, it's a historical figure, and it stayed in Europe for 20 years, and he died in Naples at the end of 1400s. Yeah, it's a real story, but yeah, for me, I would like to create a story what does it mean to be in Europe in the 1400s, just before all this, the expeditions and discoveries started. And also, he has very strange relationships. Maybe you know the tapestry Lady and the Unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
tapestry. Like it consists of like 6 pieces, and interestingly, the patron or like the person who gave money to make this tapestry is unknown. But then it was found in the castle that was built for this sultan. So then they say that, you know, he made or he gave this money to make the tapestry. It's a Flemish tapestry. It also depicts the parrot. So then next to the film, I also want to create a series of tapestries which I can expand the narrative together with the lecture performance to talk about history, like, you know, can we see the history through the eyes of a parrot? Can the parrot tell us what happened in the past? So I'm going to use a parrot as a metaphor this time. But he was a real character in the past, yeah.
And what is the name of the parrot? Does it have a name?
He doesn't have any name, as far as I didn't see any name. But I know the color of the parrot. It's a bluish parrot.
Maybe you will name the parrot.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Very good. I wanted to finish this conversation, which I'm very happy that we've had, with a very simple question that we ask everyone. What can you tell me about your name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people mispronounce my name a lot. Like when they see like the letter C, they call me like Cihad Caner. But in Turkish, we use like C to pronounce like G. So it is, the true pronunciation is like Cihad Caner. And it wasn't a problem when I came here actually. I was like, people call me Cihad. I was like, okay, that's fine. But then after finishing my school, I was like, but this is not me. So I tend to like correct people saying that it's not my name. So this is the true pronunciation.
Cihad
yeah.
Caner.
Caner.
Cihad Caner.
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
And you were given this name, or this is a name that you proposed for yourself?
Oh, this is my given name, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a story about your given name?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I think it's, yeah, this is my name, and I didn't choose, but I'm quite happy with it, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to tell our listeners?
Yeah, maybe one aspect which was very important in the pastry film, the music, because like music is also very essential for each project I do, and we used a music called Gnawa, which is a classical Moroccan music actually. It is performed by only shaking the head, so that's why there is one part in the film, which is around 3 minutes, that the pastry dances with this music, and it's from a very famous Gnawa musician, Malim Mahmud Gnea. So with his permission, I was able to use this music in the film, where the pastry could dance. Yeah. This music is known, especially in the Netherlands, that Moroccan communities use in their weddings actually. So then you also see the same music used in this film, where the actor is performing this dance.
Thank you for listening. Name Takes is a podcast produced by Kunstinstituut Melly in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Sarah Demeuse and Mary Wang conducted the artist interviews in episodes 5 to 10 of Name Takes. Each of these episodes is introduced by Sofía Hernández Chong Cuy. Judith Scholz is the voice talent of the original music. The podcast sound, mixing and original music has been developed by Jan Pohl at Okapi Recordings in Rotterdam. The audio files were mastered by Masterenzo Mastering. Production management was overseen by Wendy van Slagmaat Bos and communication and marketing by Jeroen Lavèn. The graphic design of Name Takes is by Wooseok Jang from Orange Slice Type, who participated in CLIP, an arts education program of Kunstinstituut Melly. This episode was realized thanks to a grant from the Prins Bernhard Fund. Name Takes has also been realized thanks to a grant from a donor who wishes to remain unnamed. Kunstinstituut Melly thanks them for their support and also gives special thanks to the participating artists for sharing their experiences, projects and insights to listeners of Name Takes.